The positive thing is that they have access to so much more today than we did. So if they decided they didn't want to go to college, they could still have some kind of an income. And that was our goal. Have an income by the time you're 18 so that if you want to go to college, you have something to pay for it.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that inspires action and helps you to grow your side hustle into a thriving income stream. I'm your host, Joan Posivy. Today we're speaking to the parents, aunts, uncles, coaches, and friends who have a teen in their life. We're talking about what works and what doesn't when helping teens turn their interests into side hustles. It's not a high-pressure Shark Tank kind of method, but rather it builds confidence, life skills, and income ideally before they hit 18. And no, you don't need to be a business expert yourself to support them. Renee and Jonathan share how they started with zero business background, selling a homemade product at a farmer's market with their kids. That experience evolved into a thriving family business and a method for guiding their kids to launch their own side hustles, all before adulthood. And get this, you'll never guess how many kids they have. 9 kids. I can't imagine. They say it gets easier to manage after 3 kids. I'll take their word for it. Today, their youngest is 9 and the oldest is 27. What stood out to me is how this whole process didn't just help their kids, it brought the family closer too. This episode isn't just about making money. It's about raising resourceful, confident, capable kids in today's world. Now here's my conversation with the founders of Parenting Their Passion, Renee and Jonathan Harris. Well, welcome, Renee. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hi, thanks for having us.
There is so much I want to ask you about, but let's lead off with some myth busting. What's a common idea or myth that adults believe about teens and entrepreneurship?
I would love parents of teens to know that they have more under their roof than they realize. They have all kinds of advantages that they can pass on to their kids, especially those who are in business or have a side hustle. That plus the fact that teens really do absorb what their parents are doing and saying a lot more than we give them credit for. So I think the one big takeaway that we've learned with our kids is once you identify what they can contribute to the family, it's amazing what it can do, not just for their future, but for your family economy as well.
They may surprise you.
Yes.
And we'll get into some of those surprises that you two received as parents. Well, you have a certain level of confidence in mentoring teens that naturally grows out of your success as business owners. But what do you say to adults who feel maybe unequipped to guide a young person towards a side hustle because they've never had a business themselves?
I think that kind of segues a bit to a second myth, is that an interest by itself that a teen may have or a family may have for their child is not enough really to launch anything, to be honest. And so whenever you have an interest, hobby, mini little passion, it's usually not enough to make a difference. And so if you don't have a strategy for developing that, it dies. On the other hand, that constraint of what you have in your family actually kind of guides you to finding the solution. You've heard the expression, right? The obstacle is the way. So by knowing where your limitations are, you can find your opportunities. But you need to marry the interest or a little opportunity that your child has with the tools that are available to you, to your family, or maybe you're in an extended circle. And that's where you're going to find the answer to turning an interest into a side hustle. So I think that's really important to figure out that an interest is usually a hobby in most of the teen world. So you have tons of hobbies, but they're not serving anybody.
Okay.
So that's the key. You have to switch over to the sort of serving mentality, and then that's when you find the side hustle.
And then part of, I guess it would require then a mindset shift from the adult standpoint, because if they don't have any business background or not entrepreneurial, rather than fearing the unknown, they could treat it as a learning experience for themselves too. The child's going to develop in certain ways building this side hustle, but then the parent is going to be learning a lot along the way as well.
And that's exactly how it was for us. We had no business background at all. So once we did start a side hustle, we kind of had to get the kids involved in one way or another. So learning together was kind of an amazing way to do it.
What was that first side hustle?
So back 16 years ago, I was homeschooling the kids, and we have the whole time. Jonathan had a tech job, and as part of the homeschooling experience, and part of seeing that Jonathan's tech job this is also during a recession, was starting to kind of wane as far as there was handwriting on the wall that he could get laid off.
Okay.
And that's the only income we had. So my sons and I decided to sell a product at a farmer's market that was just starting up. I didn't see this as a moneymaker. I just saw that as more of a, let's just go have fun with this. We're homeschooling. If we can make some money, that would be great, because that can kind of replace some of the things they were taking away from tech field. Like you have to buy your own paper for the printer now. You have to pay for your own cell use.
And Renee, how many kids did you have at this point?
At that time, we had 7 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's some twins in there, and one set of twins, but it's a lot of younger kids. So I could do that with my 2 older boys who are 10 and 8 to take them with me.
Okay.
So I had zero experience, but I thought farmer's market is just a fun little thing. I told them, if you guys come with me and help me, you can trade my products for some fun stuff like jerky or something that somebody else was selling at the farmer's market.
And what was your product?
So the product is a unique skincare product specifically for dry skin. So it was something that I had a problem with. I had dry, cracked skin. I was getting in after trying everything, all the different lotions, overnight gloves. I just couldn't fix my skin.
Right.
I had heard about this. It's called a lotion bar, and it wasn't out there on the internet. So I had to go and find a recipe. I was doing things at home, like making yogurt, making soap. I was kind of dabbling with that. And so I found the place that had a recipe for a lotion bar. So I started making it. So then a couple months later, when I saw that there was a farmer's market coming to town, and I was trying to figure out what could we sell there for fun, the lotion bar came to mind. So we had to, the whole research and development side came at the farmer's market. How do you package it?
Yeah.
How do you make it? How do you convince somebody to try it? Because it's unique. It's not like a bar of soap. And we had samples. So all of the things that we learned at the farmer's market was our experience. And my boys were just part of that. That just became part of the family culture. So once we did that, we took it onto the internet a few months later after doing some farmer's markets and deciding this is something that's really valuable to people after hearing all the interactions with people at the market. So we created an online store from that. This is back in the days when mom bloggers were the big thing. So
Okay.
I could make, start having relationships with the mom bloggers, send them product. They would in turn become affiliates for us and talk about it to their audience. And so that's the kind of the relationship that we had. And that's where we started to see, if we could just increase this, we could actually make a little bit of money from it. And then fast forward a few more months later, Jonathan's job did end. And now we are faced with a layoff. And we did not expect to just jump into business. But we had a decision to make. Either we'd have to move to a bigger city. Jonathan may have to travel.
Which we didn't want to do.
So we had to just go all in as a family and start a business.
All
Figure
hands
it all
on
out.
deck. Yeah. I personally love farmers markets. There's just so many benefits to starting there. And you're a classic example of that. But it sounds like that, what started as a side hustle, became your full time and is still a very viable business today, isn't it?
Yeah, that's our full-time income now.
Right.
And then in the meantime, we started to teach the kids their own side hustle, not to be a side hustle per se, but it was almost part of the education that we gave them.
Right.
We're both probably overeducated. We have our degrees, but we see it's a whole different environment now. The positive thing is that they have access to so much more today than we did. So if we decided, or if they decided they didn't want to go to college, they could still have some kind of an income. And that was our goal. Have an income by the time you're 18 so that if you want to go to college, you have something to pay for it. Or you're showing that you're really good at something and that can get you into college if that's your portfolio. So that's kind of the mindset that we had that switched quite a bit.
Yeah. And with the cost of college or university and with 9 kids, it isn't even just wishful thinking. It's a necessity as far as contributing to pay their way.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those, that experience really changed us because it fed into this idea, what happens if our kids could start much sooner doing something they're interested in that could turn into a passion. You can hear a lot right now in the business sphere, you can't live off of passion alone. And but then people are in jobs they feel like they have no passion for. So how do you reconcile? You reconcile the two by actually building real marketable skills that go with your passion. And so part of the secret to doing that is starting early enough. So if you wait till you're 18, you can find a side hustle, sometimes accidentally, but a lot of times it may or may not be connected to what your teen's real passion or interest is. So if you start early enough, you can figure out where the hooks are to serving other people and make money off of it. And it's a slow build. So that's why I'm saying that actually all of our teens had a side hustle as they were developing it. So it's not like we went and said, we're just going to randomly look for a side hustle.
Yes.
We looked at what their interests were and said, well, how can we make $10 from it? We make $20. And now that I think about it, I don't think we ever went hourly. So one of the secrets we learned from a salesperson is never charge by the hour, only by the project. And because if you do that, then if you get good at it, you own all the profits.
You're becoming faster and more efficient.
And if you're not, well, that means you need to figure out your hustle a little bit better. And that was one of the best pieces of advice we got from an adult. That was actually our firstborn, who was starting to do some photography. And a lot of them emulated that as they went along in their teens. So all of our kids, we pretty much said, if you have an interest and you're going to spend a lot of time, it's time to figure out a way to make money doing what you love.
So that whole story, from you losing your job, Jonathan, and the farmer's market, that's going to be a separate episode, and we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
You created what you dubbed the Parent Their Passion method. Walk us through the key elements of that. Like, where do you even start? What do you start the teen doing or thinking about in the program?
The parenting part comes in because you really have to clear the way when they're younger.
Okay.
So most of the time, if you want to make some money, or not even just make money, but you really want to bring value to other people, you often have to have access to the adult world. And when your teen is young, people get nervous. So you have to figure out a way for them to be invited in, or at least give them tips on how to do that. Okay. And so that's where the parenting part comes in. If you just leave a teen on you, hey, just go down the street, try to find a side hustle, it becomes very difficult, or they'll wind up doing something that everybody else is doing. So there's no differentiation. So what you're looking for as a parent is you're looking at your kid, and let me tell you, each child is very different from the other, right?
Sure.
So you're paying attention and you have conversations with them. So if, for example, your kid says, I want to become a race car driver, you might roll your eyes a bit because you realize you've been watching a lot of TV with race car drivers. But you do know for a fact that he likes working with the neighbor who tinkers on his cars, and he's always doing this, and he's tinkering around with trying to repair the lawnmower. So you as a parent, when they're younger teens, when they're older, they understand that better. Right. You realize really what he's into is fixing mechanical things. Mm-hmm. So you can help him translate that. And if not, some of these ideas that they have are very abstract. What you're looking for is something very concrete and actionable that is still connected to cars in that case.
Right.
But you're really getting him connected to something that's more mechanical, which may or may not be a car.
Right.
And that's where the power of the parent comes in, is that you can accelerate that discovery much faster than waiting till they're 17 or 18.
Sure. So two questions out of that. One, what age range are we talking about in terms of what you just described starting them at? And then can you give us an example from your own family of how you saw something and then nurtured that?
Yeah, so we have found by experimenting, Jonathan likes to experiment with the kids. How early can you start?
I actually blogged about it because I thought I would forget. I'm glad I did.
So we noticed that 12 is really a great age because they are they have their interests. And then the other part of it is, just to make clear, that's not the thing that they're going to end up doing as a side hustle necessarily by the time they're 16 or 18. There's a lot of, just like with business, there's a lot of pivoting, there's a lot of testing, you still have to get good at something. So you can't just say, I think you can go start fixing everybody's lawnmower on the street, and they have no experience. So it really has to start at an age when they can start tinkering with things, if that's their interest.
Right.
And then you keep developing that. And as a parent, you're the one who can best decide, do we need to give this up because they're too frustrated or they're complaining about it too much, or it's not going to be a viable way to go.
Okay.
Or are they just giving up out of frustration and they need to get through it and have an obstacle they can overcome? So An example with our kids is that, and this is kind of how we all started it, was in our family, when the layoff happened and our oldest was probably about 11 or 12, we didn't have the funds, for one, to just let all the kids do whatever they wanted. A lot of parents today, they'll put their kids into music or sports or whatever. And that was not our family. I mean, it wasn't really our family even before that, because we had a lot of kids and we couldn't imagine having to drive kids everywhere to all their activities. So it was a little bit more like, start with what he already had. And so at that age, he was really into photography. So one could say, yeah, he could become a wedding photographer. Let's just get really good at it by the time he's 18. We're looking at that. That might be a hard life to live. I mean, it can be done, but that might be really difficult. But let's at least start. You have a start. So with him, it was photography. We had this business where I needed someone to do product shots to put on our store site. And so we asked him, or told him, and said, you're doing great with your photography. You love to do photographs of the kids on the street playing, or like little videos. He would put little video edits together and make little movies, add the music. He was really good at that. But we needed him to also contribute to our business. And so we told him that you have a decent camera. It was actually given to him by a relative. And we went to the camera store and had him talk to the owner about what type of equipment would be best for product shots. And we said, we will buy the light and the light box that we need, but you need to go investigate, research, and let us know. Great. So that was kind of like the very first segue into, instead of the kid, he could spend all his time on the computer. He could spend all his time playing outside. He could do sports or music, but we started with that.
Yes.
He did product shots for us. He literally did.
He got better and better and better.
And at what age was he at this point? 12,
he was then about 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because he already had a business by the time he was 16. So between 12 and 16, this was his path.
By the time you started doing product shots for him, then all the neighborhood kids were excited about trying to sell their Legos and stuff on eBay at that time. So now he became the hero. So he's still doing this fun little mini hobby stuff, what I call hobby stuff, for his enjoyment, but he's not providing value. Now, when he's doing this, he became the hot commodity. I think he had an infinite white background and a bunch of other stuff. And he enjoyed it because it was connected to his interest.
Yes.
But that's what we call pivoting. We're saying he pivoted his own little small preteen way into providing value. So the more he did that, the more positive feedback he got from people.
Yes.
Plus he started getting cash, cash here and there.
We even had a neighbor who had gotten a brand new Camaro, and she wanted to have a picture of her in front of the Camaro by the lake, so she hired him to go take a picture. So things like that.
Yeah. His first photo shoot.
All kinds of different types of photo shoots. And then he had his opportunity to fly a drone. And this is really early in the drone. And so he had to navigate how to fly it. By then, by the way, when they start to actually make a little bit of money on their little gigs that they do, that's when we start making them responsible for what they need. In other words, if we were to supply him with a brand new drone or a new computer so that he can make his edits and do his Photoshop fixes and stuff like that, then he's not going to take ownership. So as they make money, they have to, and they want to, invest in the bigger thing. They're not going to go out and get a loan. We discourage them from doing anything like that. But they will hustle at that point so that they can get the next cool tool that they need. Mm-hmm. And we tell them, you can ask your grandparents, just tell them if they have any birthday ideas they want about what to get them for their birthday. Just say that what they really want is, don't buy me this. I just really need a new camera. I really need this. It's fine to accept gifts from other people who want to, or do a trade. Say, Grandma, I will take a picture of you and Grandpa together out on the porch swing, and in exchange, I'll just charge you $10. I mean, they get really creative on how they can make money. Mm-hmm. So he has a drone, and he starts to get really good at it. This is also the time where people are a little bit, they still are, kind of squeamish about seeing a drone above their roof.
Yes.
He had to navigate all of that. What are the neighbors going to say and think? And especially if it's dark outside and he wants to do some dark shots and you see these lights. So he navigated all of that, got good at it. We also allowed him to go look for the people who were already experts in that field. And he found a guy that he followed. He watched all his YouTube videos. He called him up once and scheduled an appointment to talk to him on the phone. When they're young, they don't necessarily have to pay to talk to an expert in a lot of cases. The expert is happy to help a younger person in their field. Whereas if you're
Yes.
35 and you're still trying to navigate and find your place in life, and you were asking someone, hey, can I just pick your brain? Most experts are going to say, yeah, whatever. But they seem more charitable if it's somebody young. In this case, he actually had paid somebody who was an expert in the drone field to learn from him. And this guy in exchange was starting up a whole membership. So he was able to kind of help him out too, having the right kind of questions to ask and then grow the guy's membership by knowing what type of content and so on. So he became a really good drone operator. He started to do drone videos for local real estate agents. One other tool that we found he needed, and he realized he needed, if he wants to do this, he has to be able to pitch to people. He is 16 at this point. So he has a driver's license, but how do you go from that to being able to have a real estate agent hire you to go out with your drone on somebody's property? And so he talked to a friend of ours who was an insurance sales guy who
That's my next question. Yep. That was the
he had
insurance
some
part.
time. Yep. He had some time to go talk to, in this case, the insurance salesman is a great sales pitch guy. And
Okay.
so he's giving him lessons on how to pitch to people.
Nice.
And yeah, in the meantime, yes, the whole FAA and navigating all of that, it was another thing he did. And he did it well. He had to go through all of that process. He had to get a pilot's license, I think.
You actually had to talk to a lawyer for a while.
We had to talk to a lawyer. I mean, there are a lot of things to navigate. And he was our firstborn. So he was very motivated. And as parents, we were a little nervous, obviously, with the kind of field that he was going into with all of this. But he did a good job. And this is the chance for them to practice and to get good at it with the parents saying, yes, you could try that. No, don't do that because that could be dangerous. You know, you're still there, the parent. So after he's learning now how to pitch to people and he was able to actually work with real estate agents, I'm going to fast forward to where he is now. And at age 27, after years of doing all of this drone activity, he owns a media company in a city just north of us. And he has employees, and that's exactly what he does. He has them do the core works. He's having them do all the edits and the videos, but he's out there booking the deals and getting very creative on what real estate agents want today that is unique. They want all their social media done for them, but there's apps for that save a lot of time. So he's been able to go from potential wedding photographer, or a photographer, not really wedding, to then becoming a drone business operator. So and then the other kids they have their different interests and so on that help them along the way, but with some pivots, of course.
Yeah. What a fabulous story. So getting back to your parent their passion method then, that first step then is basically pay attention what your kids are gravitating to.
Yeah, and that's sometimes the hard part because they might be interested in a lot of things. So we actually have a interest survey. The kids can actually go and take this little workshop that we have half an hour where we ask them questions. We want the parents involved too, or family members involved who can help them identify things that they might be good at that they didn't realize. So the first step, you want to go through the steps on that?
Yeah. So you do is you find an interest.
Yep. Okay.
And then you look at all the tools and resources you have in your environment. So a lot of time that those tools have nothing to do with the kid's interest whatsoever. But if you can put it together, so you can think of, let's say you have a kid who's into cooking, because often you see this on YouTube and TV a lot.
Okay.
But somebody in your family has all the video equipment right away. Your mind leaps immediately. YouTube videos about cooking, right? So that's just a simple example of if a person's into cooking, they may not be interested at all in video, but somebody else in your family
I see.
either is or has the equipment. So you teach them that's actually the parents mostly you have to teach that you want to dip into what your mom is good at. So if your mom is really into Canva or into podcasting, whatever interest your kid has, if you marry the two right away, it makes it more powerful. But you want to go beyond that. So if you layer or skill stack, as they say, all of a sudden, a simple interest that a teen has actually becomes marketable in a very short time space. Most of the time, parents are thinking in terms of a career name or a label, like you're a mechanic, you're a ballerina, you're an accountant. It's a very limited role that adults have after years of experience. But if you remove those labels and you say, I'm going to help somebody fill in the blank with this tool and this asset and this opening I have in my circle, all of a sudden they are marketable in a very short amount of time. Not making tons of money, but they're starting to make that money. So you got to get rid of the labels Usually it's in the parent's head.
Yeah.
So
Is it a matter then of everyone in the household who would be interested in doing this? I would imagine there's some kids that aren't, would be almost like listing what they could bring to the table or what their interests are?
yeah, when they're young. Yeah,
Okay.
within the family, you mean?
Yeah, within the family.
Yeah, when they're young, but once they start becoming 15, 16, usually they're looking outward and not within the family.
Okay.
Because we actually had a home business, it was an advantage that they could last a little bit longer with us. So we have one daughter who likes to do graphic art. We don't sell graphic art. That's not our business. But obviously, I'm looking around here. So we have all sorts of logos. We actually pay professional graphic artists to do stuff for us. When she was younger, we had her do some of the logos for us. It was a natural fit. Now, she wasn't very advanced. So some of the stuff we reserved for an actual professional graphic artist. But on some of the smaller stuff, she was able to do. And it was a good way for her to get a taste of that. So we do have an advantage as far as that's concerned. But usually by the time they're 15, most of the time they really should be making their money outside of the house with that side hustle that's related to their passion.
Okay. So going back to your example of cooking, which is a great one, how do you take that, I really love to cook and I'm pretty good at it, to the point where they're making money at it? Like, how do they brainstorm, I guess, how to monetize it?
So you have to ask yourself, the question is, why would somebody want to pay me, as a teen, you're asking that, about cooking? You can pretty much eliminate a lot of things that you see on TV because it's usually saturated by them, or you can buy it at the supermarket. So what you have to do is, in your own community, there's something related to cooking that is going on. Like right now, I think it's a little bit of the rage to go, what is everybody into right now? They want to cook with tallow. So you can imagine, this is part of the constraints that you have. So we're in California. Everybody still loves Mexican food. It's absolutely true. And you have part of the population not only likes Mexican food, they want something not with seed oils. We're having restaurants opening now with no seed oils.
Okay.
So we have a lot of taco trucks. We have a lot of foodie trucks.
Yes.
So your child is paying attention. He's not cooking everything. He's only cooking, maybe, this is an example only, what the market wants in his area. And it turns out in California, one of the things you can do is legally, the law's been passed about 10 years ago, you can legally cook out of your kitchen and sell food. It used to be restricted, very restricted. So we've heard some people doing that. You can make a couple $100 in one day. You have it in the back of your car. You have it in a cooler. You advertise why your tacos are better than others. It's very popular. That's only an example.
Yes.
So let's say you go out there and you find out that pre-Christmas Day, or people want to buy their food, but they also want something healthy, and you only make 50. You thought you were going to make 100. So you talk to the people. It's like, why didn't you want it? It's too spicy. Or maybe it's the reverse. It's not spicy enough. You don't know that as a parent necessarily, and neither does your teen.
Right.
But you tell them, go out there and see if you make $20, $50, $100. Ask questions. And then you come back and you modify it. And maybe you find out that, yes, they want tacos, but really all the money is off of selling Mexican bottled water. For some reason, it's a craze right now.
Okay.
In our area. You pay a premium for fizzy Mexican bottled water. And you find that maybe that's where it's at.
But you're helping them then with who they're going to sell to? Like, it's one thing to make these 50 tacos, but then where are you going to physically?
If they're 15 or 16, they kind of already instinctively know, because all the teens gather in some area, right? You've got football games. You've got a lot of people with baseball. So you find out where the people are congregating, because they're in the community. So you know a bit. Now, if they're 12 or 13, that's where it gets more delicate.
Sure.
And you have to know your child. Some kids are ready for that and others are not.
Sometimes it's when you're looking for opportunities, and it really depends on what level they're at. But for example, if it is a child that likes to bake, I know moms in the neighborhood that would love to have all the cupcakes for their 8-year-old's birthday party done where they don't have to. They want to have something homemade, but they don't want to do the baking for it. And if your daughter is known in the neighborhood as she loves baking, she's always provided, or she feeds the little kids healthy snacks or something, that she becomes known for that. I think that's part of it, is that they have to get good at something, and they have to figure out, if I put carrot sticks and raisins together on a plate, they're not going to eat that. So I'm going to become creative. And so maybe she's like coming up with little food ideas. You can go to Pinterest and find a ton. And then coming out with, oh, I can feed the neighbor kids these little snacks. The moms love it. They're willing to pay for that. And now all of a sudden you're starting to do something with it.
Part of the risk of me telling you that example is that we have no kids that do that. So we know what they got into, and they kept pivoting until they found something that would bring in some cash. So when I'm telling, like, for example, it's not a simple matter of I'm going to go down a menu and say, oh, my kid likes to bake, therefore it's going to translate immediately to this. It could be something completely different, but related to it. And that's where the part of the side hustle, and I like the word hustle, is because you're actually telling them it may not work on the first try. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're having this conversation with your kid. You're actually cheering them on.
Yes.
Right. They are interested in this. So it could be anything. Some kids in this area are really into bicycle racing. That's a whole world and everything in itself. So there's the glamorous front part of winning a race, but really probably most of the money is people selling the bicycles to people who are into the sport.
Yes.
All this stuff. There's even a whole ecosystem of food related to bicycling. I'm not in that world, but I know people who are. So if your child is in that world, mm-hmm. that's the conversation you're having with them. You're not trying to tell them, hey, the money is in fixing the bike or upgrading it or in selling the food that goes with it or whatever it is, or the jerseys.
Yep.
You're saying you're in that world. What is it that people are frustrated about that they would like to pay someone on that race morning $10 for them to take care of? Right. That's your conversation you're having with your kid.
So with our son Nicholas, if he wanted to play Minecraft, he had to bring values. So we would have him tell us what could he do to the game for everybody else in the game to make it more interesting. And he learned some coding. So he's now a software developer, but he really got into coding and making mods. Is that what they're called? Mods?
Yeah.
So that's just another example.
And he's not interested in gaming anymore. So also that's another thing is that as a parent, you let go of that stress.
Yeah.
That a lot of times what they start off with, it sort of falls back down to earth. He's taken off into space. This original interest that he had was really a hook to get him onto the side hustle. So you can let go, whatever it is.
Okay. You've mentioned adding value a couple of times. How does that play into your family dynamic? What's that about?
It starts with the family. So if they're starting something that's interesting and an interest, parents should be looking for ways they can add value. So like the baker, if you have a young girl that's interested in baking and you're going to allow her to experiment with some of that, maybe you have her make the cake for your own birthday parties, or grandma and grandpas are coming over. So you're going to do something that's going to actually take something off mom and dad's plate that they would normally have to do.
So contribute to the family.
Right.
Got it.
Don't make something up that's going to be a waste of time. But if it's something that's actually taking something off the parents' plate, that would be an example of value.
Okay. How do you help a teen discover what their marketable talent could be, especially if they're maybe A, unsure, or B, just not interested in much, maybe other than screen time?
Well, that's where you have the conversation. So if they're into whatever it is that they're doing, so a lot of times you can say, parents will say, you're spending too much time in XYZ.
Okay.
When you're saying you're spending too much time in XYZ, the correct conversation is to say, you're spending a lot of time in XYZ. What could you do to help people who have that same interest to move forward in their interests? So I'm saying interest because it's very generic, but when you talk about a specific field of interest, there's always something more that people want. So for example, I see the microphone. So if I was a teen and I was interested in podcasting, but I don't have a show, I don't have a topic to talk about, I could probably say maybe she's interested in a better microphone that deals with AI solving some of the background issues. And you'd be yawning, say, okay, can you do better? Well, the thing is, you can get your kid researching that, testing that, maybe going online and doing comparisons. We actually have a kid who is into podcasting.
Okay.
And knows his microphones very well. And those were one of the things that he did in order to break into the field, because he's too young. He's way too young. No one would hire him.
Yes.
But people are interested in some of the technical issues that they have, and they don't care what age you are. So you hyper-focus in one specific area. Your teen actually knows the answer because they're spending too much time in that field.
Right.
So it's something they always want. They're always begging you.
But how about those who are maybe just not interested in the business side of it? Like they love the task part of what it is, whether it's cooking or gaming or whatever, but they shut down when you're talking to them about the business side of it, the pricing, the
Well,
marketing.
that's easy too.
Okay.
Here's the reason why. Because if they are into it, so this is an example of a kid who is into it but is not interested in the money part. You basically don't buy their tools anymore. And we actually say that. Oh, they will say, I want a better gaming subscription. I want a better microphone. Instead of a $200 microphone, I want a $500 or $1,000 microphone. And we'll say, excellent. How are you going to make your money? We will literally say that. How will you make your money using your interests in order to get to that?
Got it. So then there's
Because
the
later in life,
motivation.
We don't buy it for them. And then later when they're 25, you're not buying it for them. So they have to figure it out. Or maybe they're willing to do some other job, but it's more fun if it's something that they're interested in.
And since they are going to be so new at so many aspects of the business, they're not automatically going to be successful all the time. How do you kind of stick handle it when you sense they're getting discouraged or they're not getting customers or maybe they're getting negative feedback and really taking it emotionally?
Yeah, well, that one too, we also talk about it because we say, if you don't get feedback, there's a reason for it. So what we do is encourage them to find out what that reason is. So a lot of times, if the case of food, they actually don't like the food at all, period, or it's not trending, or it's much cheaper at the store. So just knowing that is going to give you part of the answer. So we actually have that conversation.
Okay.
Right. So in anything, even if it's lawn mowing, it could be like, why, I don't know, I'm making this up, but why are people not accepting what seems to be a good deal for me to mow their lawn? And they say no. You don't know what the reason is. Maybe the reason is because they're worried about a safety issue and you're too young looking. So then the question is, so if you know that answer, if that's the actual problem, then it could help to have an older brother or dad come around the first time around, say it's okay, he has permission. It's a very simple approach to a problem.
Like an appearance, maybe.
Maybe it's an appearance issue. Wear a button-up shirt. Or it could be that it's too early. They don't know. They don't understand the noise regulations. It's too early in the morning, and people don't want to be knocked on their door on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning too early, and they'll just say no. But a lot of times they don't know the answer to that, so you teach them to ask those questions.
And one little trick that if people are doing the side hustle anyway, you have the perfect audience because they're living it, they understand. But you also have to remember that you need to share your wins with them in your side hustle, because if they only hear how hard it is, all this work of trying to build a business, and they only hear that from you as a business owner, they're not going to get as interested. But our kids know that there are the good seasons and the harder seasons, and they know that we work really hard. And then all of a sudden we have money coming in, and that's paying for all this extra stuff that they didn't get to, we didn't get to experience in the past. So you got to talk about the wins and the hard so they see both.
And they're going to see too how you deal with adversity when things don't go your way. Basically, your attitude towards that is going to be a huge teaching point for them as well, and how they tackle it when they inevitably come up against roadblocks and a lot of no's.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would imagine that some kids, like you were saying, the person that wants the $500 microphone and not the cheaper one, they're going to have to earn it themselves. If they're just really not into the business aspect of things, would it be okay for them to just go out and get a part-time job?
Sometimes they have to. I think, it'd be better if they can do it with their talent building.
Yes, it would be okay. But I would say, why is the fast food their passion? Why is the fast food their passion? They would answer it isn't, right? It's just to make a buck. I get that. So part of the problem is that, yes, they're willing to work. So it's not the working issue.
Right.
So why wouldn't they want to work in already what they're interested in? So if I could say, let's say a kid is into bicycle racing, and there was a way to make money from his bicycle racing that he's already, by definition, into, why would he not be okay with that, but okay to make money at fast food when he's not interested in that?
Right.
So you have to go back to the root of the problem.
And you're finding that with enough digging in like that, you can usually find an interest that a person,
absolutely,
that the child would rather do it themselves than turn to a part-time job.
And again, it's the benefit of having your own business. Like, we can have our kids work for us in the business and we pay them something. So if they do need a quick amount of cash and we have something that they can do that's something small, ideally it's going to be related to their interest, but just in case it's not, they could make a quick buck. Whereas if they're going to start working outside somewhere else, now they're committed to that. and it's going to leave them very little time to actually develop their own thing.
That's true with everything else that's going on. So very briefly, how did you end up developing this method of parenting your passion?
When it first started I was reading because I was getting laid off. I knew it was coming. I could have stayed in the field, but then that would have required us moving. And I was reading the self-help books for adults, and a lot of them, great advice, often discussing you're working in a field that you don't really care for, and then you get laid off, and then you wonder, how did you wind up there? A lot of them says, had you started sooner with this better mentality, things would have been different. So I said to myself, why don't we start sooner with the kids and try it? So I was
it's too late for me, but let's teach the kids different. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, the kids get asked, how did your parents raise you to already know what and do what you're doing so young? They get asked that a lot. And that's when we decided, oh, okay, this is something that would be helpful for parents to know.
Right. So it's basically exactly what you're teaching is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I mean, a lot of these ideas weren't, the combination of how you apply them to teens is kind of new, but some of the basic ideas is what we tell adults to do for their side hustle.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if I'm correct, you're at a corporate job, it's putting food on the table, and you don't necessarily want to quit it right away. And there's this thing that you're really interested in, right? The typical advice is, well, test the market, right? So if you want to become a painter, you're not painting random paintings, which is what we tell teens to do. So you're just, I want to become an illustrator. So we just kind of take these random painting illustration classes, but that's not what we tell adults to do. That's crazy. You're saying, look at the market. You have a particular style. See if you can develop it further or add something to it. That's what we tell the teens. So most of the time, we had one daughter who was interested in art. I actually took her to a traditional art school. I think within 2 or 3 classes, I realized this is a complete waste of time. They're teaching everything, and most of the people teaching could barely make a living. And I'm like, it's because it's not serving a market. It's a hobby, which is legit. You can have a hobby, but it's not a long-term solution to developing a lifestyle of passion that's married to real skills in the marketplace.
Because that's part of the balance as well, too, when you're raising kids, is you don't want it to all be about making money and focusing on this. Sometimes there's just flat out playtime, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But it's nice to see how much they get into it and they enjoy it. So if they are, if they could have that at the end of the day when they leave the home where they are doing a job, a work that they enjoy doing.
Yes.
And it's just that much better for them in the future.
It pays for their passions. Like the one who's into videography.
Right.
He has a side hobby. He likes to do, what's it called? Astrophotography. He likes to go out. He makes no money off of that.
Yeah, they do a lot of this.
But he has nice equipment. He could not afford that unless he was able to find a hustle. So it's not an either or. It's rather it's fueling your passion, and you're finding a way to stay in the field because there's so many aspects to something that you really like. There's the technical, there's the social, the marketing.
Right.
It all kind of works together, but now you're not a starving artist.
Yes. You're homeschooling, meaning that you're really in charge of the calendar. How well will this work with kids in the public school system when they have to work around homework assignments and other extracurricular activities?
I would start with the activities. And I was having a conversation with a parent, and they had already graduated their kids. And I said, they asked the same kind of question, thinking to the future about grandkids. If that person who had spent the time in their extracurricular activities, would they be grateful when they're 25 and 30 that they spent all that time? Because usually we're talking thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of time spent in some kind of extracurricular activity. So in the future, maybe they are, maybe that they were so glad they invested all that time, or maybe they would have liked to do something else with it, or they could have gotten a jump start on doing something they enjoy doing when they are out of the home.
Okay. And then possibly like that, you made the comment before about it's not an either or both for some who are maybe want to be part of the sports team or something like that.
Sports team is a great place to hustle.
Yeah.
A sports team. Do you see? I mean, I hear parents, we're in coffee shops. I hear parents complaining how much money they spend, not only on the equipment, but the travel time. All I'm hearing is opportunity. So if you were on a sports team, you can sell a bunch of stuff. You can maybe video the coach for instructions and put it up. And so you can start developing the team's playlist for practice, right? You're bringing value to the team.
You could do YouTube videos on how to throw a ball faster, harder. There's ways to get better even at the sport if you're into the sport that could actually turn into something more interesting later.
Sell more trendy clothes to all the kids that the parents are dumping tons of money on.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. You use that opportunity because that child, in that case, that teen, knows that sports world very, very well.
And they know what's trending.
Dumping money like you won't believe on that thing. I mean, we're just like, wow, it's expensive to be in a high school sports team.
Yeah.
Who's getting that money? Why can't you be part of that action? And now you can have some pocket money while playing your sport.
Yeah, you're seeing it a different way. You've got a different lens on it. Tell us about a time that one of your children launched a side hustle that didn't work out.
I think we had to make some decisions with our daughter, who is the graphic artist, because she was just really into horses too. So she had two things going that she really wanted to.
Yes.
In her mind at age 14, she's thinking, I could buy a horse, train it, and sell it. And we're thinking, we are not horse people. The one thing we had was an equestrian center within walking distance of our house. And she loved doing the horse thing. So we did allow her to be down there with the horses, meet the people, help them. One lady even had her not just scoop poop, but train her horse. And she even paid for our daughter to get some good training in. In the long run, though, the graphic artist stuff, which she loved that just equally, was going to be a better fit for her.
Yes.
And so we really encouraged that more.
Right.
And it has benefited her. She did buy her first horse as soon as she got married. And thought,
Really?
this is the horse I'm going to flip. Yep, she got it. She got her horse. She trained it. She spent all this time and money on this horse and then put it up for sale thinking this is going to be it. It didn't. She took at least a year or two to get a buyer, and it wasn't what she had thought it was going to be at all.
Okay.
And it could have been her thing. But I think she also realized that there's a huge investment of time and money. And she said, someday I'll still have my ranch and I can still do horses later. But right now, she still loves the book design. She designs books for publishing companies and so on. So she can still do that now. And it's more natural for her. It was a better fit for her.
Yes.
And she loves the horses on the side. But as far as the flip part, that's harder.
Yeah.
She was asking for more investment from us as a family, time-wise or whatever. I think she was 16. We had to say, this is the end of the horse story. You can still be involved doing the stuff, but we're not going to subsidize it anymore with time. And it's just a dead end.
Yeah.
And that's the constraint, because there are people in our area who have little ranches. They're already have equipment and stalls, and it's all built in as part of the we don't have that. If
that was our culture, it would be different. If we lived on a ranch and she had the resources already there, that could be a different story.
Yes. Yeah. Something that came to mind as a result of that story. So I too was involved. I was a horse lover when I was a kid. Nobody in my family was involved in horses, and I lived in a big city. And so I found ways to do trades, et cetera, to make it happen, and ended up competing. But then later on in my 20s, I left that for a number of reasons. And decades later, I'm now back into it again. And I'm just thrilled, over the moon with the horse that I ride. Thank you. But what I was wondering, because I get involved in hearing about so many side hustles through the podcast, is I was recently talking to a guest that is very skilled at high ticket drop shipping. And so I was thinking that if I ever went that route, which I'm not because I love this and I've got enough on my plate, but that I would marry that side hustle with the horse industry and maybe look for something a higher end in the equestrian world, like saddles, for example, that might sell for like $3,000-$4,000.
Yep.
Would something like that fit into what you're teaching? It's
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a whole shipping office here. We're set up.
Oh, of course you do.
Our products.
Yeah.
And so that would be an example that did not happen. But had she been a little more hyper focused instead of doing all kinds of training, which was wonderful for her.
Yeah.
But in terms of finding a market, and she would probably say that now today. I think she's into the natural hoof training.
Yeah.
She's being trained by someone, and she's realizing it's a hyper niche and it's growing.
Nice.
But had she been say, hey, I could work the saddles, maybe find used one or flip, and there's a lot of horse stuff around. That would have been a natural fit to use our resource, right? She's not into shipping per se, but now the shipping is going to give her an edge, maybe to trade and flip. I don't know if that's a term, but she used the term for flipping horses, so maybe it's the same for horse saddles. But that would be an example of how you could marry a tool or an asset in your family's environment to an interest. So their interest in the tool are not necessarily connected until you make that connection.
Yes. Well, have you found that some of maybe your own kids or some of the students that have gone through your program, they've just decided that the life of an entrepreneur is not for them?
Our kids kind of went through a bit of that. A few of them had, where they did go, and it was almost beneficial for them to do that, where they were an employee for somebody else. The irony is that they came back. I'm thinking of our blades. We have our second born is a bladesmith. So he had his own forge in the garage. He built it. In the beginning, his way of making money was to make knives and then eventually sell them on Instagram. So he had a huge account.
He sold a lot of
handcrafted knives. He had to decide what type of knives people would actually buy, the size, the shipping, all of that.
Yep.
And then he also created a portfolio. His Instagram account was his portfolio. So when he did leave our house, one of the first jobs he was able to get was to work for a knife making company, probably a couple hours away from us. So he moved out there, he worked for them. He got to see all sides of the business that he didn't like too. And you're an employee. So in his case, he was an employee for several years before coming back to now he owns his own machine shop in a couple hours south of us.
Right.
And so he went through that route and then came back to, I think I prefer being self-employed. Our son, the drone, he did that too, where he was working for somebody else. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that...
A better way to describe it wasn't that they were looking to work for someone else as an employee or that they were tired. It's just that their portfolio was so strong, people paid them enough money to say, come work with us.
Right.
So that's great. So they jumped. And once they got there, they had access to computerized equipment, things that they couldn't afford themselves. They got trained within a year. And then within a year of that, that one particular son decided to go out on his own. He says, normally it takes years for people to get to that level of expertise, but he already had a very deep knowledge of metal.
Yes.
So only thing he was adding was the layer of machinery. And so once he got that skill, he realized he could break off on his own. And he already had a pretty good idea of how the business ran.
Yes.
But that was only possible because he started so young in his teens.
Yeah.
That's not a normal route.
Yeah. And we have another one, the software developer works for somebody else. So in his case, he's kind of like a contractor. He works his own hours, but he does answer to somebody else. So yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah. And in those cases too, they have the potential to learn so much more different things in that corporate environment, especially the ones that are well funded and have access to this equipment and software that maybe he or she isn't exposed to otherwise. Work at that for a certain length of time and then think, you know what? It's time to go back on my own, or whatever their choice happens to be, right? Yeah. Nice. Do you recall one small moment or encouragement of support that you gave one of your kids that made a big difference for them?
Yeah, early on, I could think of that. We used to go, again, some people who are very good experts in the field. This is a tip for parents. People who are very good at what they do can be on the grumpy side because they have a low tolerance level for imperfection. And I know in the horse world, by the way, I'm very aware of this. Some very nasty social people, but they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
And we had a situation like this where there was a man who's probably in his 70s and very, very good at what he did. He was also hard of hearing. He also had family problems, which I happened to know because other people told me. And he would scare young boys into tears, break them, kind of a bad coach movie. Yeah. And I said, okay, here's how you're going to do it. When we go in there, he doesn't hear. So instead of saying he doesn't understand, he's just going to yell. And then he's going to expect you to fold. What you're going to do is smile and wave. That comes from the Penguin show. You're going to smile and wave, and you're going to be hyper polite. And it was amazing. That's what he did, because I actually saw him break people. He did not break my son, because we had this conversation. We're going to go in there. He's also lonely. He's going to be over attached to you. So he latched on to this, what he perceived as a long lost grandson. And I says, you're going to have to navigate this. So we had these conversations with him. Now I was there, so I was able to kind of monitor it. So it wasn't any physical danger.
Yeah.
That conversation changed the course of where he was going. So he got teaching from someone very good at what they did, because we navigated the social aspect, which is often not talked about. And you have to navigate that for the parent.
One other extra skill set with that was that later he was on different trips. He went to a bladesmith show. He sat next to somebody on an Amtrak train once, and he asked the guy, he was sitting next to an older guy, what's one thing you would have changed about your life? Or what, basically he asked old people, what kind of bit of wisdom can you tell me? Having an 18-year-old ask an 85-year-old something like that is pretty impressive, but he's now used to that. He's used to older people. He knows how to deal with them. So just those little skill sets come early too.
Excellent. For our listeners who are aunts, uncles, mentors, or educators, how can they spark entrepreneurship in the teens in their lives?
They might have opportunities. I think for us, if we had more people in our lives, like relatives that were nearby, that had more opportunities, whether like my brother who lives in Florida, but several years ago, he gave our son a Raspberry Pi, which is something for computers, making your own computer. And that sparked the interest in my son. So if you have a little gift like that, or you have a skill set, or give them a tip on something that they're working on that can improve by this one little tweak.
Right.
Just encouragement. I think the biggest way is encouragement and then if there's a resource or a tool or you want to hire them and it's actually valuable for you, then hire them to do something small.
Yeah. So if you're the favorite aunt, it's not your daughter, but you're the favorite aunt, and you find out that you have a niece that's really into some particular hobby, offer to interview her, not to put on your show because maybe it won't fit your show, but interview her, edit it for her, and have her put it up on her blog. That of course she should be blogging about what she's interested in, so you can make her look good. So that's an example. If you use some kind of resource that you have that would enhance whatever it is they're doing.
I'm sure that's going to come about because my niece has 3 of her kids. They're 5, 7, and 9. And the 9-year-old, gosh, it was at least a year, if not 2 years ago, he started bringing his mom like business ideas. And here's how we could do it. And very inquisitive. And she too is homeschooling them and basically helping them follow and develop whatever their interests are.
Right.
It
sounds very promising.
Oh, it's incredible to see them blossom and just gravitate towards different things. How has building businesses as a family changed the dynamic between you and your kids?
The siblings get along incredibly well because they know who to tap into when they need something. So, one guy can fix anybody's computer. We have one of our kids is a video editor. So he started out as a voice actor, but he kind of became more of a video editor. He could just do amazing work with his video edits. Our 16-year-old is kind of being lured by 3 brothers who all want to hire him
for their own business.
For their own businesses.
Yeah.
So he has a lot of options open to him right now to see what he likes to do and what he wants to pursue. So the dynamics have been amazing for us as parents just to sit back and watch, especially at family gatherings where we're all in the same room. And they're exchanging ideas. They're giving each other advice. Someone who has a hard time making a decision knows exactly who to ask for to get some good advice. So it's like having your own mastermind group.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Is somebody really good at conflict management or sales or whatever? That's fabulous. Yep. Well, for adults listening who are focused on growing their own side hustle, how might mentoring a teen actually reignite their own creativity or energy?
One thing we've discovered is that our kids, it was intentional on our part to take more risks than we did at their age. So we have this cute saying that you're still cute till you're about 21. You can get on people's couches, people will open doors for you. After that, you kind of lose that cute factor. And at their age, we were waiting by the phone to be discovered, right? So we're not going to venture out. We're going to stay in the fast food business while we're going to college. It's very safe. We're waiting to find for someone to discover us. They are much more comfortable approaching people with a solution, a very specific solution. And that has actually encouraged us to be a little more brave. Now we have a lot more riding on us, and so we're aware of that.
Yep.
But that a level of energy and excitement and positivity in our life is kind of boomeranging back on us.
And they know a lot. I think probably if you underestimate how much kids know, especially technology-wise. They know how to use AI probably better than we do. All of these things that are so new and developing. Yes. It's exciting to see them come up with some kind of a tool or a quick fix that it would have taken me forever to figure out on Google, and they have an answer real quick. So
There must be times when the two of you just like kind of pinch yourself and could you believe the results that these kids are getting? Like, those are our kids.
Yeah, it is. It's encouraging because it was a lot of work. It's a lot of work going through, and you have to deal with teenage angst, but you would have had to anyway. So it's kind of nice that you get some good
Yeah,
advice.
I think that when they first leave home, the first thing they kind of do, not completely, is they eat junk food, and then they put on tons of weight in the first year, and then they realize, oh, that's really dumb. And then they go back to cooking the way you told them to. Because the first year you think, you know what, did they forget everything we told them?
Right.
And then they come back, and then probably around 23, 24 is when the phone calls start and say, Mom and Dad, you were so right about this thing.
There is one question I wanted to loop back to. How do you handle when money starts coming in from their side business? Do you help them with guidelines around that? They're paid $100 for doing something. Do you coach them on what to do with that money, or?
It depends a lot on the different kids. You're going to have, and with any family, you're going to have the spenders that want to just spend it on junk. I mean,
Okay.
stuff that's just on clothes, on the latest on pair of Vans all the time or something.
Okay.
And then you have the kids that are very careful with their money, and they're afraid to invest, or they might just buy something that is so on sale it's not going to be worth it. So there's part of that. As they get to be around 16 or 17, they definitely start to realize we teach them, or we hook them up with their older siblings. How much is it going to cost you to go live on your own? And part of that is also when they're finished with homeschool and they've graduated, if they're going to stay home, we do charge them rent. So they can decide, are you ready to be launched out there, or do you want to save a little bit of money, but you're going to pay rent?
Right.
So that gets them to not just think, oh, it doesn't matter, I don't have to do any responsibilities around the house. So a lot of it is that they are starting to figure out what does it take with money-wise to be able to live on their own. And then a lot of it is just deciding they have to make those decisions with our help.
Yes.
Should I be spending money to go to this conference? That's one of the things they've had to decide. Or I need a better computer. Should I spend $3,000, or should I just get one that's $800? And they have to do the research. But
Right.
a lot of times it's like we kind of put the back on them to go and research that, go ask people if it's something, because we don't have the answers on what type of equipment they should buy.
Yes.
So they have to do a lot of the research on that themselves.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, it's a
probably a lot
gradual
of
conversation.
coaching or teaching when it comes to running the business, in terms of, I'm just going back to your cooking example. If he or she suddenly gets a big order, they're going to have money in order to fund that, to buy the ingredients. So those smaller sales that come in, I guess you're teaching part of it to set aside some of that to
Yeah,
reinvest.
they learn that real quick.
Okay.
Exactly. And they learn that
Yeah.
real quick from experience. So
Okay.
we don't allow them to get involved in something that's going to have the debt collector knocking on the
Yeah,
door or
sure.
something. So
Yeah.
by the time they get to that level where there's a lot of money involved, they're usually much more mature. And by the time they're 16, they understand that pretty well.
I think the
Awesome.
bigger one is time management
Yeah.
over money. I think the time on, are they taking on too much because they don't know how long something's going to take, or they figure out a job that they agreed on had problems and issues and backlogs, or they're waiting on somebody else to finish their thing. They thought that would happen faster so that they can get their part done. So I
Yes.
think time is almost, wouldn't you say, more of
Yeah.
an issue sometimes than the cash part.
Yeah, I could see
And
that.
then you have to talk them off the ledge where they took on a big commitment that they have a personal pride in delivering on, because it is their area of passion, and they find that they either don't have the tools or the experience, or somebody misrepresented the scope of the work. So
Okay.
you teach them, okay, go back to the person, see what can be done. And there's a lot of parental involvement. Yeah, we've had some scary moments where it's not a killer issue, but it's something a parent can help.
Yeah, that guidance comes in so valuable for them. So what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Our website is parenttheirpassion.com.
Okay.
And probably because it's a whole mindset switch, there is a place to subscribe to our emails. And that takes you through just a series of how we did it, just things to think about, changes you need to make. Because I think the biggest hurdle and obstacles sometimes parents and family members don't quite understand is that mindset switch. So a lot of the questions that you have get answered in that email sequence. And then we have little workshops. We're very big on blogging, teaching kids how to blog, because that's their portfolio. We're also on Instagram, Parent Their Passion, and Facebook, Parent Their Passion.
Okay, excellent. And I'll make sure I drop those links in the show notes. So what's your best tip to inspire others to help the young people in their lives start and grow their side hustle?
I would say start blogging, start writing about it publicly, not privately. Put it on a simple blog post, even though no one is reading it in the beginning. Just the act of putting it publicly will transform the way you start thinking about it. You'll put up there, it could be as simple, if you're young, you don't know what else to say, you love ballet, you haven't even done ballet, but you're just enamored with the idea, say, first post, I love ballet because it makes me feel this and this. And you put it up there. So it's kind of like you're putting your flag up, just say it. Start writing about it.
So you recommend the blog as a way to build kind of a presence, build your portfolio, explore.
And as a way to self-discover yourself too. In other words, articulate
Right.
what it is you really want to do.
Excellent. So much of what you shared applies to not only teens, but our adult friends and family members, and to ourselves as well as we look in the mirror. So thank you so much, Renee, Jonathan, for giving us some really insightful tips and techniques to help young people in our lives to nurture, pursue, and profit from their passion. And of course, for being today's Side Hustle heroes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
When Renee and Jonathan talked about guiding their kids towards creating income through their interests, it brought me back to when I was a teenager. As mentioned, I grew up in a big city in a family that had absolutely nothing to do with horses, but I was obsessed. So I figured out a way to be around them. I'd often take the bus and subway down to where the mounted police kept their horses, just so I could be around the horses. Eventually, I worked for free at a horse farm north of the city on weekends and throughout the summer. And eventually, when I was 16, I had the chance to buy a beautiful 3-year-old thoroughbred mare for $500 from the farm. It was a dramatically discounted price, but a huge amount of money for me back then. But because I'd worked tirelessly at the farm, the owner offered me that sweet deal. My parents said, okay, we'll cover $250, provided you come up with the other half and the ongoing monthly expenses. So the money I made from my part-time job at a dry cleaner's and birthday money and any side ventures that I could come up with made it happen. Her name was Peanut. Well, that was her stable name. She had a registered name, but to me, she was Peanut, and we became inseparable. I'm currently putting the finishing touches on a beginner's guide to launching your side hustle. It's called Smart Start, From Idea to It's Live in 7 Steps. And in it, I mentioned that when kayaks were starting to blow up in popularity, instead of thinking, how much will 2 cost? I remember scheming, how could I get 2 for free? Not through sponsorship, but through smart side hustling. Well, it turned out after doing some research that I realized that if I sold just 6 or 7, that would cover the cost of 2. And that's exactly what happened. So I wonder now, did that experience with Peanut, having to get resourceful, sow the seeds at looking at situations more creatively? We start to learn these lessons at such a young age. And the truth is, you don't necessarily need to have the money. You just need to get creative and ask, how can I make this happen? Legally, morally, and ethically, of course. But that shift in thinking and mindset is everything. I'm sure you caught that several times throughout my conversation with Jonathan and Renee, how they have a different mindset than a lot of adults when it comes to how they nurture an entrepreneurial spirit in their kids. If you're just getting started or thinking about launching something of your own, you'll want to check out my guide, Smart Start From Idea to It's Live in 7 Steps. You'll find it soon at sidehustlehero.com. Well, that's a wrap for today. If our chats are sparking your entrepreneurial spirit and providing valuable insights, consider showing your support by visiting sidehustlehero.com/support. That's where you can shoot me a virtual coffee. It's a real thing and a fun way to give the show a caffeinated thumbs up. Thank you so much. In the episode description, you'll find a link to connect with Renee and Jonathan, as well as the full show notes, which live at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, it would be so appreciated if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start and grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.